Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 9 of the Raccoon Club podcast. So I got back from Vegas the other day, and I had on the plane ride over back home, I had another one of those realizations that you can only sort of get when you're taking the red eye back home and it's like 3 o'clock in the morning and you haven't slept for 2 days. I flashed back to the roulette table at the casino, and I've always loved roulette tables. Never quite understood why, I think, until now. Because the one thing about roulette tables is the visceral reaction that everyone has to the actual game itself. It's unlike poker. I think it's unlike baccarat. It's unlike anything else, where there's a sort of kinetic energy about roulette that doesn't exist in any other game. Because you have that wheel spinning, you have that ball bouncing around. There's a sense of anticipation that happens. And that is when the wheel starts to spin and that ball starts to bounce around. The look of hope that everyone has around that table, while that ball is still bouncing, while that wheel is still spinning, everyone believes that they can still win. And the minute that ball hits a number, hits a color, the looks around that table changes completely. And then you quickly see who's won and who's lost. And most of the time, everyone's lost. And with that, I couldn't help shake the thought that the roulette table really is a great analogy for sort of the economic systems that we've built for ourselves. To me, I think the best example is the housing market. Now, I live in a city where the housing market is insane. And I don't say that lightly. I really do believe that there is a mental illness behind housing prices, especially in the city that I live in. Any piece of crap is going for $1 million, where a semi-detached is going for $1 million. You know, when I was growing up, there used to be an expression, I'm not sure you kids out there, you've heard this expression before, called $1 million mansion. So when I was growing up, $1 million bought you a mansion. Like it was there used to be a wrestling character in the WWF, back then it's called the WWF, called the $1 Million Man. And he was a villain. He was a heel in the WWF at that time. So that's the benchmark that I have for $1 million. You either bought mansions or it made you a villain. Now, $1 million in my city, and I don't live in New York, just so you know. I don't live in like one of the big American cities. Nowadays, $1 million will get you, literally, if you're lucky, a semi-detached. A completely detached, it's probably puny. You're probably lucky if you get some kind of front yard, maybe a bit of a backyard kind of thing. So that's what $1 million gets you. And so that roulette wheel, the look on people's faces around that roulette wheel reminded me of the look on the faces of a lot of my real estate investment friends, a lot of my real estate agent friends, a lot of my friends who just purchased a home, and all of them have this look on their face that they're certain that they're going to make out like a bandit before the market crashes. They're certain that when that wheel stops spinning, when that ball finally drops, they're going to walk away with a hell of a profit. And I see this around me all the time. I see this in the stock market. A lot of my stock market buddies, you know, who know they're investing in bubbles, but think they're going to bail out before the bubble pops. And sort of larger as a society, I think this happens too. You know, as long as stocks go up, as long as the price of housing goes up, so your home equity goes up, a lot of people are just happy. You know, they don't question why. They don't question what would happen once the ride is over. They're watching that wheel spin and they're watching that ball bounce around. And as long as that wheel is spinning and as long as that ball is bouncing, nobody gives a shit because everyone is hopeful that they're going to win. You know, the thing about a roulette table is that you know that not everyone can win. In fact, almost everyone will have to lose because that's how gambling works. That's how the roulette table in particular works. So it's kind of incredible to look at a crowd around a roulette table because everyone at that table knows that everyone else is going to lose. That if they win, that means that everyone else around the table has lost. But when you look at the economic models that we built, that's exactly sort of what has happened, which is that, boy, are there no winners. They're mostly losers and maybe a small fraction of winners out of it. I guarantee you, statistically speaking, you're probably one of the losers in that exchange. It's just the way the system works. So I keep going back to the housing market and how, I keep looking at all my friends who have purchased houses for like 600,000, 700,000, 800,000, $1 million. I had a buddy of mine just a couple of weeks ago purchase a house for 1.3 million. About 6 months ago, I had another buddy of mine purchase one for 1.9 million in a city where the average income is maybe $50,000, maybe $60,000. How in the world is $1 million plus mortgage sustainable? Well, it's sustainable only if the price of the house keeps going up so you can sell it at a higher cost so that the bank can mortgage it at a higher cost. And the cycle continues and continues and continues. Again, that wheel keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. Personal debt is exploding right across North America and probably right across the world as people are unable to actually live off of what they earn. They have to borrow more and more money. Believe me, if people lived within their own means, the economic system would crash. There would be no money flowing into the system. The only thing keeping the economic model going, the only thing keeping that wheel spinning right now and that ball bouncing right now is people in personal debt, people taking on debt to continue to spend. At some point, it becomes mathematically impossible for someone to pay off a debt. I mean, no matter how much they earn in their regular job, no matter how much they cut costs, they'll never be able to pay off their debt. But everyone's sort of ignoring that right now. We all are watching that wheel spin. And as long as we make it week to week, month to month, as long as we scrounge through another year, scrape by another year, we're just as happy standing around that roulette table, watching that ball bounce around. Because I think somewhere in the back of our heads, we still believe that we're going to win somehow. We're like those people standing around that roulette table in that moment of glee, in that, 1 minute that they have where they think they're going to win. A lot of local and even national economies depend on housing development. Somehow everyone thinks that they're going to walk away a winner when that's just not going to be the case. When the housing bubble pops, I think for a second time, it's going to be disastrous because people are still carrying forward the debts from the 2008 crash. I have no clue how they're going to sustain themselves after a 2017, 2018, 2019 crash. I mean, no one's income is going up. If you look at the cost of housing since the Civil War, it's been relatively steady until you hit around the 1990s, and then it starts to spike, and it keeps spiking even after 2008. Well, if you look at people's income around that time has not gone up that much. So if you and I are not earning as much money as we did 50 years ago, comparatively speaking, and our incomes have not gone up, comparatively speaking, as much as the housing costs have gone up, how in the world do we expect to pay for any of this? How in the world can banks and governments keep doubling down on an economic model that is absolutely designed to crash? Again, the only explanation that I have for it is that look that people had on the roulette wheel at Vegas, is that everyone is caught in this euphoric moment that they think they're going to win. They think everything's going to work out okay. That they haven't even thought about what happens if the ball drops on something they haven't bet on. And that to me is actually really worrisome because it means that there's no foresight. It means that for the majority of people, they haven't thought ahead what happens if you bet on the wrong thing. It makes me feel that there's no contingency plan. There's nothing to protect us when everything goes to shit, as it will have to go to shit. Because again, These numbers are utterly unsustainable. And the insane thing is that I'm almost certain that the more sophisticated investors out there, the people that really do know money, the people who run financial markets, are probably really aware of this. But like everyone else, I think they're stuck around that roulette table, hoping to God that everything works out fine. But again, if you know the purpose of this podcast, you know that things are not going to work out fine. I think it's all going to go to shit. I think there's no way we walk out of this over the next decade without a major crash happening. I think we're so hypnotized by that wheel collectively that as long as the stock market goes up, as long as the price of housing goes up, as long as our home equity goes up, we're willing to forget all the other signs. We're willing to ignore all the other signs that this is a losing bet in the long term. We're willing to ignore all the other signs that this only leads to despair, that this only leads to bankruptcy, that this only leads to sadness. You know, there was a moment when I was watching the roulette table in Vegas. There was a moment where sort of the call for last bets was made. And a guy put his chips on the table, looked at the wheel, took his chips off, and then walked away. And I thought he was the smartest guy in the room that night, because he probably figured out 1 minute of euphoric feeling is not worth losing the couple of $100 if he didn't come to his senses. And I just wish that as a society, we were to do that more often. I wish as a society, we'd allow ourselves not to feel euphoric for a while, just to get a sense of reality, just to get a sense of where we're supposed to be, so that we don't make stupid bets that we're going to regret one day when we wake up and that ball's on the wrong number or on the wrong color. Thanks for checking into this episode of the Raccoon Club podcast. We'll catch you next time.